Most people using Claude Code are thinking way too small. You're building one app, or you're creating one type of script, or you're just trying to solve one type of problem. A few months ago, I taught you the Claude Code basics in my initial 1 hour plus course. Today, I'm creating the sequel, and this sequel is meant to help you use Claude Code at scale. So whether you're technical or non-technical, my goal with this video is to make you so good at Claude Code that everyone around you gets jealous. So this is a 4-act blueprint to help you create your own AI factory using Claude Code, not just for vibe coding, but to create whatever you want. All right, so let me give you an overview of the 4 acts that we'll go through. Now, act number 1 is called the 9 multiplier hacks. And these are not necessarily meant to be beginner level tips. They're more intermediate and advanced to help you 10x your output without necessarily having to 10x your effort or your input. And some of these hacks might include some that even developers might not be aware of. Act number 2 is multimodal mastery. While working in a terminal can be a blessing, sometimes it can be also a prison. So I'm going to walk you through how to use newer products like Claude Code Web to your advantage, so you can not only vibe create on the go, but also be able to manage an entire team of agents to work on micro tasks, while Claude Code on your computer works on the meatiest tasks of all. Act number 3 goes through the replicate anything framework. And this is really where we try to apply some of the hacks that we learn in Act 1 and build things of actual value. And the very first project I'll show you is something that I've never seen anyone do in Claude Code, which is replicate a functionality that's very popular in the front end of Claude AI. And finally, Act 4 is called real world application. And instead of me walking you through even more hypothetical projects that might not apply to you, I'll actually show you the winners of my school community's Claude Code Hackathon. And these are folks just like you, where a mix of strangers, both technical and non-technical, came together, ideated a product for a problem that actually exists, and built an MVP that was functional in under 2 weeks as a team. And the point of this is to break any limiting beliefs if you're watching this and you're not technical, or you've been itching to try it out, but you don't think that you can actually upskill. So you're not just gonna see their demo, you're gonna see an interview between myself and them walking through the process, the inspiration, and most importantly, how they got through some of the bugs that they encountered as a group. So now that I've set the tone for this 4-act Claude Code play, let's dive in. Alright, so given the nature of this video, it only made sense that I vibe code a front end to walk us through each and every act. And for act numero uno, my goal is to pepper you with as many hacks as possible. And a few of these might look familiar, but my goal is to also show you a different lens on how to employ these techniques and functions within Claude Code. So to increase the value per unit time of showing each one of these hacks, I'll use a real-world project where I'll try to clone my style of writing and create an SOP where Claude Code can basically replicate and convert any piece of menial text to something converted in my way that I speak. Very simple use case, but it will allow me to show you each and every version of this. And like I've mentioned in prior videos, I love using Claude Code within Cursor. Now you can use it wherever you want. You can use it within Warp, you can use it within Windsurf, wherever makes you happy. For myself, I like to use it within Cursor because if you notice, every single week there's a brand new flavor of the month as to what the best model is, which model has killed the other models. When I have Claude Code in Cursor, I get the best of both worlds because if Codex 7.0 comes out, all I have to do is trust my helpful helper right here, and I can just switch this to GPT 5.1 Codex or whatever it is, and both of them have access to the same code base. So essentially, I can just route any Cursor model to the same code base that I'm building with Claude Code. But instead of changing my skill set every single day and saying, I'm switching from this to that fully and being ignorant of everything else, I'm going to stay with Claude Code because they've been developing a great platform, adding way more features, and I'm going to become a specialist. And I do advise that many of you, whatever tool you end up choosing, don't bounce around from one place to the next. I'm going to park my skills and build primarily in Claude Code, and if I want to be able to complement that and bring in virginize from another model from Cursor, I'll just have that copilot at the right-hand side. And if you're not familiar with what this is the Claude Code for VS Code extension that you can get in Cursor and other platforms by just writing Claude Code for VS Code, installing it, and anywhere where there's a file, you'll see this brand new little icon right here that when you click it will open a brand new session. And the best part is you can add multiple sessions at the same time, and each one can run in parallel. So not only can you use this in parallel, but you can theoretically also use Claude Code on the web in parallel on top of it. So if you wanted 5 or 6 quote-unquote agents to do asynchronous work, you could. And a quick TLDR of the lay of the land right here, if you're not familiar, this allows you to enable extended thinking so that Claude can think longer about a particular task. Naturally, it will take more tokens. This will tell you which file it's referring to or which file it's looking at when you give it a command, and this will allow you to control whether or not it goes into YOLO mode, whether it allows you to babysit it and give it permission for every task, or you just let it run free after you give it permission the first time. Now with the logistics out of the way, let's dive into our first project. So to start things off, to be as lazy as possible, I wanted to emulate the way I write my emails. So I just took a screenshot of a series of emails, went onto the Claude AI on the front end, screenshotted them and said, here are some samples I've sent, create one file with all of their text combined, create one comprehensive markdown file that I can download. And what I'll do is I'll just send this over and we'll use that markdown file as the initial part of our Claude Code repository. And after it finishes running, we get this unified markdown file right here that we can download and then drag and drop directly into our Claude Code session. And once we have it right here, we can just go back into Claude Code. We could do /init to initialize the entire repo and familiarize Claude Code with this specific file. And the result of this, well, it will create a claude.md file that acts like the command center for the entire session. So now that it's created this file, it now tells me exactly what's in there, where it walks through what it thinks this repository's purpose is, the content structure, my pattern of writing, contact information, and if I click on claude.md, you'll see the preview right here, where it walks through exactly how I structure things, how I refer to our consulting practice at my agency Prompt Advisors, contact information, etc. So from here, let's employ the very first hack that I mentioned. So I referred to hack number 1 as the global brain. One thing that many people don't know is that if you just do hashtag and then you say something, it will add this to the claude.md file. Sometimes when you give it an instruction like, no, you got this wrong, or no, you didn't interpret it in XYZ way, it will just remember it within the session, but it won't update our command center. If we do it like this, where I say something like, can you make sure that I write without using periods in most of my sentences so it comes off a little bit more informal? And I send this over, it should be able to update the claude.md file. And what helps is if you're already pointing at the file like you are right here, it should be able to edit it, and it edits it without me telling it to go and refer to the claude.md file. So this becomes really handy, especially deep in projects where things are popping up, where if you could only create a pseudo rule for memory, for it to remember each and every single time, it would be that much more helpful. Another thing we could do is do hashtag and say, can we actually add another thing where we create 3 different drafts of the same email so I can pick the one that I like the most. Then if we send this over, again, it should know to update the rules of that command center. And this is something that you can, over time, know when it's worth remembering within the session itself versus remembering in perpetuity for every other sessions in the project. So that's done, and that was an easy one. Now if we go back to the list of hacks, the second one is something a little bit newer, which is the plugin and the marketplace. And the way that you can think about plugins is it's essentially a bundle, where instead of you downloading just an MCP server or just downloading instructions for an agent or a set of agents, a plugin is a proxy or a bundle of all of them, where in one plugin you can get a series of agent instructions as well as MCP servers all in one shot. And this is awesome if you want to not only replicate other people's environments or the way they structure their Claude Code projects, but if you want to share it with your colleagues, your team, whoever, you can share the plugin instead of sharing a list of MCP servers, documentation, JSONs, claude.md files, etc. So if you go to github.com/anthropic/Claude Code, you will see their open repo right here, and you'll notice sections that are called plugins. Now what we're going to do is just copy paste this URL, that is the Git URL, for this repo. If you go back into Claude Code, all you have to do is if you're updated on the latest version, you should be able to do / and then write plugins, and you'll see this thing pop up that says manage plugins. Now if you don't see this and you don't know what version you're on with Claude Code, a really quick way I like to use this is I like to use warp externally because it's just a standard terminal and you don't have some weird back and forths where sometimes Claude Code will tell you it's updated where it actually didn't. So if I just go into another window here, and this is warp, which is pretty much free to use as long as you're not using it at crazy scale, you can just do Claude version. It'll even tell you what you can do. It'll tell you what version you're on, and if you want to update, then it'll tell you right here. So I'm on this version of Claude Code, which is 2.0.37, which is the latest version. If you want to be able to update that version, you could just do Claude update, and then it should be able to update to the absolute latest version that it finds. And you can see here, just ask me permission. So I'll just say yes. It will go through, double check the current version, and if there are any updates, and would you look at that, there is a new update. So it says Claude Code has been successfully updated from 2.37 to 2.042. And if you're ever curious as to what happens in one version versus the other, their entire repo lists every single thing that they've released. Now, if we go back to Manage Plugins and you're using the extension, it'll ask you to continue in a terminal. So I'll click on yes. So this pops up right here. And then we can essentially use this and drag and drop it. And it will ask you, do you want to be able to browse and install plugins, manage and uninstall plugins if you already have some existing? Do you want to be able to add a marketplace or to manage a marketplace? So if we click on number 1, browse, it will say that there are no marketplaces configured. So if I go back and I go back to add marketplace right here, you can copy paste any repo of your choice that has plugins. There are tons of open source community-based plugins. If we paste the very URL we got from before and we enter this, it will clone the repository and it will give you a list of the plugins that Anthropic has put together out of the box. Now, if you click on space, it will select, and you can select multiple of them at the same time. And if you click a space again, then it will deselect. And if you want to know more about what's in a particular plugin, you can just go over one. Let's go over feature dev, and then click on enter. It will walk you through what it does. So this one says right here, it's a comprehensive feature development workflow with specialized agents for code-based exploration, architecture design, and quality review. So if we go back, let's just pick a couple. So I'll pick on feature dev, and I'll pick on this front-end design. Especially a lot of you that are doing vibe coding or anything related to front-end, you don't want the standard purple gradient background that Claude Code puts together. Front-end design will give you that much extra oomph to make a better UI. So once you're ready to install, I'll just click on I right here. It will install those plugins. And if you want to make sure that they actually are used, then you can just do /exit, which quits. And then I can refresh, continue again if I want to, or I can just create a brand new session. All right, so now if I open a brand new session and I write plugins and I click on continue in terminal, and I'll just bring this over again, and I do manage plugins, I should be able to see 2 different plugins. And there we go. When we click enter again, we have the feature dev and we have the front-end design. But let me give you an expert tip, because sometimes this VS Code extension, even though it's really easy on the eyes, is not easy on implementation. And once in a while, you can tell it to install a plugin and it will lie to you and tell you, oh, they're installed, restart the session. Then you restart again, then you reinstall it. Then you do this 3 to 5 more times, and now you want to scream. Instead of kicking and screaming, what you can do is you can ask Claude Code to update this settings.local.json file, and the part that we care about is right here, which is this enabled plugin section. You want both this and this to be set to true, and you can essentially just take my settings file as is. I'll make it available to you in the second link in the description below, just to show you a little template. Because sometimes you might need to ditch the VS Code extension temporarily, use the old-fashioned terminal, and then in this case, this command is my shortcut for enabling YOLO mode. And if you do through here, plugins, okay, and you tell it to manage plugins right here, and let's go and actually add some more. So if I were to add another one, let's add one more. Let's do the code review. Okay, let's do space and then I, and then it will say it's added it. I'm going to call BS because I don't see it's enabled here. So I'll actually either do an @ and then settings file. So I'm going to basically tag this file and say, make sure this is updated. Because sometimes it can fib to you and say it's installed, you restart, and you don't see it there. When you see it hard-coded in this file, this is not the command center like claude.md file, but it manages all of the settings, all the things you've given permission for Claude to do on your behalf within the scope of this project and this repository. And you can see right here, it's updated the file with the code review plugin, and you can physically see it here. So if you can physically see it, then it's not lying to you. So now, if we restart a brand new session, we can even use the standard extension. And then if I go to /plugins right here, and and I click on continue in terminal, it'll bring this up. We'll drag it back, and we do manage and uninstall plugins. We'll now see that there are 3. So again, if you ever go back and forth, whether it's for this, slash commands, anything in general like hooks, make sure it's written in the file itself. This file, again, is your friend. It is the most important part of this specific repository. And if you want to be able to add MCP servers, anything similar to that, and Claude is telling you it's installed, but whatever you do, you don't see it, this is your way to get over that. Now, focusing on the plugins themselves, when you enable the command, you can see right here, we have the front-end plugin, and now you have basically a brand new skill that you can invoke in the course of your session. Now for hack number 3, that tip I just gave you will come in really handy, because sometimes people try to install MCP servers by asking Claude very nicely or doing /mcp, and again, it tells them that something's installed when it's not actually installed. One really quick way to get around this is just using a file and creating one called .mcp.json, and then you ask AI to come up with the documentation for the MCP, and then you can use it almost instantaneously. So to demo this, we'll create a brand new file. We'll call it .mcp.json. We'll enable this. Then we'll go to the web. In this case, let's use Perplexity, and I'll ask it to use the Chrome MCP server, which is essentially a way to open up the UI using Google Chrome to inspect and have the AI inspect the work it's done. So let's say, hey, can you give me the MCP documentation in a payload I can easily copy paste for the Google Chrome MCP server? Now this MCP server doesn't need any form of authentication, so it should be straightforward and out of the box. So if we take this as is, boom, we'll go back into here, we'll paste it, we'll save, very important. And then once we close this and we open a brand new session, let's just click on this, click on the extension, it should detect a brand new MCP server from the jump. All right, so let's bring this MCP server to life by building a small prototype of a front end and allowing it to use the Chrome MCP to check the aesthetics of the front end. So let's take a look here and let's say, so I want to be able to create a front end where I just enter any form of text, and then when I enter that text and I click on convert to mark, then it will take that text and use my style of writing to convert it into my style of an email. So if we just take that there, let's actually add some more documentation to help it out. So let's go back to Perplexity. Let's open a new thing here and we'll say, can you give me the API documentation in Python of how to call GPT-5 Nano so I can easily invoke it in a current function for a web app I have? So then I will take that. It should create some form of code block that I can feed in as a requirement. Naturally, I could feed in all the API documentation and have it learn from it, which I will show you later on in this video. But let's just take this as is. Initially, it gave me the old version of OpenAI code, so I just asked it right here to make sure you're using the OpenAI API Responses API, which is the latest version to call OpenAI models. So all we have to do is just take this, and then we'll feed it here, and I'll say, use the following language model exactly the way I am telling you down below. This is the exact documentation. You're not aware of it because your training ended in 2023. This is a much newer API. One thing you'll need to ask me for is an environment file so I can put my API key. So once we put that here, and then let's paste this in, we'll just go into Shift Tab into plan mode, and then it will come back with a plan. I will approve that plan, and then we'll execute it. So it comes up with a plan, but we want to add one more thing, which is a reminder to use the MCP that it has at its disposal. So I'll say, this all looks good. One thing I would add to the plan is making sure at the very end, when you create the UI, make sure you use the skill sets that you now have to make a better front end, and use the MCP server that you have to pop up localhost and look through the app and make sure that things are working, and more importantly, that things look beautiful. So if we add this here and send it over, we should get an adjusted plan, and then we'll confirm it and go from there. So these are the to-dos it's going to go through, and by the end of this, we should have an app running locally on our computer that we can inspect. While this is running, I wanted to show you this pop-up that asks me whether or not we want to use the skill that it has at its disposal. And if you remember, this is the skill that we installed via the plugins. So this is proof that that works. So if we click on yes and don't ask again, now we should be able to harness the power of that front end skill to be that much more clean and clear on the front end. And as it nears the end of the completion of V1, it asks me to use the Chrome extension, or the Chrome MCP, I should say, to open up the browser and verify and audit what it looks like. And there you go. You see it's looking at it. It's going to send visual feedback back to the terminal so it can iterate to the end. And there we go. So instead of pulling teeth trying to go back and forth, just install an MCP server. We created a .mcp.json file. It was quickly integrated and used as a part of the steps. And now if we go into V1 of our app, if I say something like, no, I don't have time to meet with you, unfortunately. I'll be traveling for the next couple weeks, but I will send you my Calendly link so you can book yourself in the next 3 to 4 weeks from now. And if I shoot something like this over and click on Convert to Mark Style, it should be able to go through the sample emails that we extracted from before and create a version of it. And like we said, we wanted 3 different versions. It seems like, yeah, we have professional, standard, and warmer. It's not necessarily categorized by those categories, but at least we have a draft that we can build on. Now on to hack 4, we have the core agent rule. And this is not brand new. The concept of agents or sub-agents in Claude Code has existed for months. But my perspective on using agents has changed. Typically, we think of agents as populating different roles, as different employees would populate roles in a company. So you'd have the UI designer, you would have the code reviewer, you'd have the security auditor. But there's an issue, and there's an issue that hasn't been solved yet, which is each one of these agents is technically a separate prompt with different tools. And sometimes these agents' goals and ambitions aren't necessarily aligned. So I found that using agents as different parts of one specific task and breaking apart that task into subtasks that are executed by different prompts with tools is way more efficient. And if that doesn't make sense on the face of it, let me show you. So let's go back here and let's enable and create some agents. But in this time, I won't create an agent in the old-fashioned way where I assign a UI validation agent. We'll create agents in a very different way. So instead of using mobile app builder or UI designer, we'll create one specific to the project. So I'll say this one right here, and then I'll do generate with Claude. And then let's say our overall task is I want to make the front end a lot prettier. There's different ways to make it prettier, right? So even though we have this skill that's not a standard purple background, I want to be able to see different categories. I want a thoughtfulness in terms of the next natural steps that might happen in the app, maybe a reconvert or a suggestion or anything along those lines. So if we take that one vague task of make this better, and we break that up into different, not agents per se as mutually exclusive roles, but tasks taken care of by different prompts with each one having its own context window, that would be a lot more effective and gives you a competitive advantage. So for the first agent, we could say, I want you to be able to look at the front end of our tool, use the Chrome MCP server, and suggest how we could improve the look and feel just from purely a color and hex code standpoint, and then implement it. And if we send this over, it should be able to generate a description, and we'll add that to our growing army of agents. So then I select the model we want. I'll give it a color. Let's do red. And then now we have this UI color optimizer agent. And then we just click enter, and we create another agent. So I'll create a couple different versions. I'll create one more right now, which will be more in terms of how to structure the UI. So it's a lot more thoughtful in terms of the overall breakdown of the components. So for this one, I want you to look at the UI and more so optimize for the user experience. So not just looking at how we're generating one specific input to output, but how we could enable retries, what we could do to better categorize the outputs, etc. So then we'll do the same thing, and then I'll continue this process and build 1 or 2 more agents. So now we have 3 new agents that we put together. Again, they are agents that should work together, that should have aligned incentives, because all of them have been tasked to work on the front end from different perspectives and different lenses. And now that I have these agents at my disposal, what I can do is I can send one unified prompt that will harness the power of each and every one to take this app to the next level. So all I had to do was just send this very vague prompt that says, I want to invoke all of our agents to take our front end to the next level. And once we sent that over, I didn't use plan mode, although we should use plan mode. It then takes the agents, runs them in parallel, and executes every part of the task where I gave it full creative ability to go through, and it comes back with a full response as to what it did on the color and styling side, the UX optimization, and I had an agent I put together called Feature Expander, which is try and look for helpful features that you think would be the natural next step for a user journey. And then we get something like this, where now we have the ability to have a quick start example. And then when it comes to conversion, I can just click on convert to mark style. We can get a single response, or we can do a comparison between different versions of that response. So now if we click on compare right here, you'll be able to see all three versions of the response. In this case, it didn't convert it to warmer or professional. You can export it. It thought of the next natural features, which is to download as text, copy to clipboard. You can see right here, it's operational, or click on any one of these to try, like I said. And this is the power of using agents as different parts of a whole versus completely mutually exclusive tasks and projects. And before we move on, I wanted to zero in on one small nuanced detail. So because we had this feature expander, there are some things that happen behind the scenes. Again, all aligned on the same incentive, which is take the front end to the next level. One of those was adding keyboard shortcuts, which again, I didn't give it any form of instruction to do. So now on the front end, if I just say something like, hey, how's your day? And then I do Control Enter, it automatically converts the text. So if you're looking to reimagine and see what's possible, when you create all of these different soldiers under one unified army instead of completely different battles that they're fighting or different wars that they're fighting, it's that much more impactful without necessarily breaking everything. Now, hack number 5 became available with Claude 2.0, which is /rewind, and this allows you to go back and hop back to a prior checkpoint in the project. Now, if you use something like GitHub, and if you don't know what GitHub is, it's a way to back up and manage all your code in the cloud. So if your actual computer got wiped out or it went down, you could still access all your project and project assets in GitHub itself. Rewind is Claude Code's version of a commit, which is essentially committing a milestone of that code. So if we loop back here, again, if you update to the latest version of Claude, you should be able to do /rewind, and then when you pop it up, it will tell you every last checkpoint that you can pop back to. So in this case, when you entered this specific prompt, I want to take or invoke all of our agents to the next level, I can go back to before we implemented all these changes. Now I don't want to, but you could if you wanted to. The last thing I'll say on Rewind is it's really helpful for larger code-based projects as well, because not only does it allow you to go back in time, but sometimes you implement a feature that's 99% right, but it's executed 100% wrong in terms of the structure, or the way it's built is not meant to scale, or not meant to scale to multiple users or concurrent users. If you find yourself to doing the right thing but in the wrong way, and you want to go back now with this newfound knowledge to avoid that, I would recommend using Rewind to redo that entire instruction and make sure that you have an aligned process and you're on the right foot. Now, on the face of it, hack number 6 doesn't look like an actual hack. /plan is not a brand new thing. People have used it before. I've used it before. The hack is in how you implement a plan. Typically, you will just say, listen, go and execute this. You'll get some semblance of a plan that, whether you're technical or non-technical, at least sounds like it makes sense. You might make some edits, but then you just let it go free. The trick here is to not just use plan mode. Use plan mode to create different phases or milestones of your project, where you can have an external asset or an external repo manage it. If that doesn't make sense, let me show you. So our editor is set to plan mode, and what I can do typically is give it a list of things that I want to adjust, and it will come up with its own plan. But what nuance we can do is tell it to create milestones and phases where it makes sense to logically cut off one portion of the project. And what we can do is one of two things. One, we can tell it to create a markdown file that tracks all of the phases and checks off once it's done each phase. So that what we can do is also create a brand new chat or clear the context window of our current chat to make sure that we always have the highest likelihood of finishing a session and actually finishing the features along with that session. So I'll send over an instruction right now, and the key thing is I will tell it to create a markdown file to be able to track every single thing that it's doing. Okay, so I want to create some more edits in the app itself. Right now it looks okay, but what would be helpful is implementing onboarding. If someone was looking at this tool for the first time, they wouldn't necessarily know exactly what they should or could do. So having some form of onboarding modal when you load the app, and something that you can minimize and bring up if you ever need to re-onboard yourself, would be very helpful. But there's one key thing. I want you to break apart the different phases of creating this onboarding module in, let's say, 3 or 4 phases. Or you know what? Anywhere where it makes sense to logically cut off one phase versus another. But I don't want you to stop there. I want you to create a markdown file to track each and every phase with a series of checkboxes that you check off as you finish each phase, and don't go to the next phase until you tell me that you're done a particular phase. Now, what this will allow me to do is once it tells me it's done phase 1, I could essentially clear the chat, meaning I could clear the context window, to make sure that we have a brand new chat for the brand new part of the feature that we want to implement. So Claude put together the plan right here in different phases. So this is phase 1, and then we have phase 2 right here, and then we can go all the way to phase 3 and 4. It tells you that it's going to track all the changes in this onboarding tracker. Then we have the technical approach on how it's planning on doing that. And the goal is, fingers crossed, when it's done phase 1, it should inform me. So if I want, I should be able to refer to that file that it's using to track the plan and use that in a brand new chat with a brand new context window. So I'm spying on the progress right now, and you can see it's updating the onboarding tracker. And anything in red that you saw above is it deleting the lines of code related to the certain tasks. So you can see initially these tasks were unmarked, and what it did is the red denotes it deleting that to make room for the update that it did actually add these to the file itself, as well as the acceptance criteria. So at the very end, it should tell me that it's done version numero uno. And if I go to the onboarding tracker, just to double check, I want to double check that there's nothing in phase 2 that's been touched. Yes. So now it's a good practice to go and do /context. This should show you how much context is remaining in this session. So now if we zoom in right here, we can see that we have free space of 43%. This is pretty risky going into more and more features, because when Claude Code compacts a conversation, this is where hallucination nation begins, where the AI slop is born. So we like to avoid that stuff. So if I do /clear right here, and then we do /context again, we should be starting not necessarily from 0, but from a higher space. So in this case, after the system prompt and everything else that comes out of the box, we have 87%. And now I have the luxury of being able to tag and say, all right, onboarding tracker right here, execute phase 2, and let me know when you're done. Now it should already tell me when phase 2 is done based on its instructions, which would be a good time, by the way, to add another instruction. So let's actually escape this. Let's do and use the other hack. So always stop after completing a phase of a plan to ask for approval to proceed with the next one. So if we commit that to project memory right here, this should update the claude.md file. So I don't have to even write that instruction that I just told you. So I will redo a version of that instruction, and I'll just say execute phase 2. And now when I send this over, it should be able to execute phase 2, come back to me, and we can repeat this process. And it might seem a little bit monotonous and annoying to have to clear the chat every single time, but if you want to be able to avoid the pain of going back and forth with AI, just because the context window is almost maxed and now you have AI slop coming into the code, this helps you minimize that risk. And just like that, it confirms that phase 2 is now complete. And if we take a peek at what the app looks like, usually at this point, when you have agents work at things and you're deep into chat, things break, local host breaks. But you can see now we have this onboarding where when we go through the tour, this looks very similar to a lot of really decently well put together apps out there that walks you through each and every feature. Now, that leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of the positioning, but that can be improved. Yep, for sure. Yeah, but we have progress. The goal is progress. And maybe once we implement all the phases, this will be figured out. But the main goal is this hasn't been very painful right now, especially when we continue to clear the context. It's an extra step on your part, but you're saving many steps in terms of the tug of war that you would inevitably have with AI. Now, hack number 7 is the Are You Sure hack. And Claude, as of Claude 2.0, naturally will push back on you with some clarifying questions. But many times, if you're aggressive enough, it won't. So what you can do is, to make sure that you always have pushback, especially if you forget about going into plan mode, you can add an instruction to your Claude MD to say, one thing is if I don't go into plan mode and I want to execute something that's not unbelievably simple, like not one single small change, make sure to push back on me if there are any clarifying questions. Now don't push back for the sake of pushing back. If it's straightforward, if I've properly articulated myself and haven't stuttered while giving you an instruction, then execute the task. But if it's not fully clear exactly what I want or exactly which part of the code base I want to make a change in, then I want you to push back on me. Then this gives you some insurance, plan mode insurance, where if you forget to do that, we can update the project memory, and the next time we have some form of instruction that is not necessarily the most clear-cut and explicit, it should ask us one or two clarifying questions. So let's test it out for a second. Let me say, okay, go and nuke the whole app, destroy everything. Fingers crossed it doesn't actually execute it. Worst case, we'll use /rewind. And there we go, like I was hoping, it now needs to clarify, what do you mean by nuking the whole app? Do you want to destroy the onboarding system? Do you want to destroy the entire application, etc.? So now, even if you're not in plan mode, you have this backup switch, this last layer of defense to make sure that you don't do something lazily, especially if you're frustrated going back and forth. Now, in a way, I've already exposed hack number 8, which is context and compact. Like I said before, if you really want to use compact, you can. This is how it works. It'll clear conversation history, but keep a TLDR of the context. What I notice and what many other users notice is sometimes it keeps a TLDR or a summary that isn't fully indicative of everything you are doing. Now, if you have compact and you have something like an onboarding tracker, or not an onboarding tracker, but a tracker of your to-do list, then it could work because you have always an artifact that you can always reference. So if you do compacting the conversation, in the next 10 to 15 seconds, it should zip it down. And if I check on context, this is a good way to double check that it actually did something. And there we go, we now have compacted the conversation. And if we do /context, one guess I would make is in the next few versions, they'll probably include context on the bottom left-hand pane. But for now, you can see that the context is here. You can use these little emojis to denote what portion of the context has been used. But again, we have 83% used. And what's helpful sometimes is to also look at the other tools. So you have the MCP tools here. This is my Magic MCP tool, which uses 21st.dev to improve UI. Now that we have the skill and the plugin, I might not need it. So it's good to keep track of this, because if you have a MCP server that you don't really need, like this one, I can just remove it and it'll free up more space. One other thing to keep track of is your memory file. So the Claude MD is great, it's a command center, but if you have a 15,000 token .md file, it will nuke your context every single time, and you probably have a lot of bloating in there. And when you have bloating, it won't follow those instructions. And that's a good segue for our last hack, which is the project brain. Now, I've already gone through the fact that it's a command center, the fact that you want to keep it lean and mean. But one other thing, and a common question that I get both in my community and in consulting calls, is what happens when you have a code base with millions of lines of code? That becomes tricky because if you're using something like Claude 4.5 Sonnet or whatever the new Claude model is, the time you're watching this, it has a fixed context window. It's right now 200,000. It could become 1 million. But when you have 5, 10, 15 million lines of code, depending on if it's a production level application, you want to use your Claude MD in a very specific way, where you don't just give it the rules you want it to follow, you also give it a map or an inventory. So when I say inventory, we have a series of folders here. And if you're not technical, you're probably looking at these folders and you're saying, the stuff's in there, the thing works, I'm happy. And I'm not telling you that you have to necessarily fully understand each and every file. But what you can do is you can ask Claude to create an inventory of your code base and create a separate markdown file of that inventory. And ideally, it should tell you what files correlate to what functionalities. So if you're trying to make changes in very large code bases, and you don't want to do something like /initialize to take the entire code base into account, which would by nature fill up tons of the context window, you can use Claude MD to also pinpoint specific changes without having to ram so much context from the code base into the context window. So as an example for inventory, let's say we do /clear and we wipe the slate clean. I could say, okay, so can you create a new markdown file, and I want you to create an inventory of the entire code base. Let's assume that I'm not technical and I'm not a developer. Can you create an inventory of each and every part of the code base right now, what it correlates to, whether it's the agents we have, whether it's the environment files, what they are and what they do, the MCP files, and anything else that you've put together to be able to spin up this app. I want to be able to properly categorize each and every part of the code base. So when I have a specific change, I can refer you to that specific file, and you know most likely which part of the code base we need to make those changes or additions to. So we'll send that over. Theoretically, it should push back on me if it's not fully clear, but it should create a file that you can keep in perpetuity. That becomes an artifact, and that's an artifact that you can bring into whatever sessions you want, especially if it's a much larger code base. Like I said, you can have a higher likelihood of setting it to plan mode and telling it, ignore everything except for this specific domain, go and make those changes. And after a few minutes, it creates this codebase inventory file where you can see each and every part of the application. So you can see the main application where the majority of the assets live. It walks you through step by step in plain English what it contains, what it does, and what references it has. So the dependencies of those files, the user interface where it's located, every single part. So the next time you go into plan mode, you can tell it to refer to the codebase inventory so it can have a better guess as to where those changes need to happen. So that sums up Act 1. And in Act 2, it'll be a lot lighter, where I'll just show you where you can use and tap into Claude Code in different domains and modalities, so you can use what we've been using right now, which is the actual CLI in Cursor, but you can also marry it with additional tasks that are maybe not as invasive in Claude Code Web. Alright, so hopping into section 2, this will be short and sweet. The goal of this again is just to show you how you can use Claude Code on the go using things like Claude Code Web. So even though Claude Code in the terminal is our daily driver, we could still use the app on the go, on mobile, and most importantly, if you're working on Claude Code Web, you can then teleport or port the work you work on there back to the terminal if you want. But before we can use Claude Code Web, we either have to create or import an existing repository. So what we're going to do is commit the project we've already done thus far, and then push that, and then work on it using Claude Code Web. Now, if you've never connected your Claude Code account to GitHub, what I would do is go into the terminal, not the extension, and then do /install, and then you can see right here it says install GitHub app. This will go through a few steps where you can connect your existing or brand new GitHub account. It'll do some authentication, and once it's authenticated, you'll be good to go. You can use the terminal, you can use the extension, and you can just say things like commit this code and create a brand new repo. So in our case, let's do that. Okay, can you create a brand new repo in my GitHub repository, make it public, and commit all the code that we have here that's useful. If you created any form of test files or files that aren't important to import into the GitHub repo, then make sure that you ignore those, add those to the git ignore. Otherwise, push it and commit it. So now when I send this, it should be able to realize that I have GitHub already logged in on my computer. It is now going to go through all the code, organize it. It's adding everything like the API keys I have to a git ignore, really important because you don't want to commit any form of API key or credential, and then we'll go to the next step. Now here it asks me whether or not I want to ignore the codebase inventory and the onboarding tracker, in which case I don't need this to live in GitHub, so I just tell it no, and then I tell it to push everything else. Now after a few minutes, we now have the entire repo created and pushed with everything ignored that needs to be ignored, and if we go back into GitHub, now we have this detailed README walking through exactly how the code base works, what we have in the code base, and if we were to import this anywhere else, we would be able to keep building on the project. Now to get onto Claude Code Web, we'll go to claude.ai, click right here on the code section. This will bring us to the web. Then as of now, I still have $1,000 credit from Anthropic. So what I'm going to do next is we'll go in this search bar. This is where, again, you could have created a new repo, but in this case, we now have one called Digital Twin Email. So I'll click on this, and then you can set up your own environment. So here I already have one called Test2. You can add your own environment, and this is where, especially if you're more developer oriented, you can have more control over different data access as well as environment variables and third-party APIs. Now, as of today, where would I use Claude Code Web versus the normal CLI? Well, one limitation, because this is still in research preview as of this recording, is you can't upload files. So I can't complain to it with a screenshot saying, go and do this, or I can't upload a .markdown file and refer to it for a PRD, project instructions. So for now, I like to use the web product primarily for planning, ideating, brainstorming, or making very surface level edits, especially aesthetic UI based edits. So one example here could be, Can you create a PRD walking through every single thing that we should improve in the app? Things that if we wanted to go into production, into the real world, where this would be well received and not just personalized to me. So I could send this over. So now this will start running. And then we could start another task in parallel. So this one's running. Now I can do another one where we can say, look at the UI components and suggest whether or not we have any form of redundancies. One thing I noticed in the walkthrough or the tour when you're onboarding onto the app is some of the modals are misplaced. Can you go through and see which modals might have that problem? Things that would be veering off screen if someone was going through the tour. And the idea is whether you're at your computer or on your mobile, you can see right here, these are both running at the same time. And if I wanted to add a task from my mobile phone on the go, I could. So especially when it comes to any form of downtime, you could use that to go back and forth and have a couple agents ideate on what should happen next, create a brainstorming plan, or go through the code and see, do you have any form of security vulnerabilities, which we can do as well. So I could say, can you go through the code and see whether or not we have any form of security vulnerabilities? So now we have a security officer running in parallel. And the main concept here is efficiency. Some things, especially if you have a credit on your account, you can offload to Claude Code Web to save on token costs that you could use for very valuable iteration on the application or the use case that you're using Claude Code for. And very similar to the CLI, you'll get an updated to-do list right here that will let you know exactly what the plan is and how it plans to execute that task. If you want to be able to stop it, you can send a message to interrupt it, or you can just click on stop right here. So this is an example of one completed step where the agent has gone through and found every place where we should update the onboarding walkthrough for the app. So in this case, we could tell it to go and execute and make the changes, or we could do what we referred to before, which is the teleporting hack, which is essentially either telling it to teleport, or you can now use this bottom right-hand side button to open this in your CLI. Now, if you're more accustomed to GitHub, you can do things like submit PRs, create branches to make sure that different things running in parallel are not actually merged into production, so you don't break your app, especially if you haven't had the chance to review any of the changes. One expert tip is, especially if you're on the $100 or $200 max plan for Claude Code, you not only want to use Claude Code Web and use it where it makes sense to save on cost and API cost, but you can also always go back to chat. So if you have a purely conceptual question, you can always create and go back and forth with your AI agent buddy in Claude AI, and then take that and execute a draft or do a deeper brainstorming with Claude Code Web, and only when you want to spend tokens on building things and iterating on things where it might make sense to just do that in Claude Code on the CLI. So anyway, you have a hierarchy, especially if you're trying to be frugal with whatever level or tier you're at on the Claude Code plans. And like I promised, the goal of that act was to be short and sweet. So now you are equipped with the ability to vibe, code, vibe, create, whether you're on CLI or on the web or on the mobile app. So now starting Act 3, it's time to apply the skills we've learned up until this point. Now, I'm going to show you how we can do 3 different things. One of them is to recreate functionality that exists on the front end of Claude AI. And if you have no idea what I'm referring to, I'll show you shortly. Number 2 is I'll just show you how we can go from an API documentation. So let's say a brand new service comes out, a brand new model, everyone loses their minds, and you want to be able to not just build something basic with it, but build something proper. You could theoretically take that API documentation, feed it to Claude Code, onboard it, and have something working using that API pretty quickly. And lastly, we'll try to build something actually useful here, which is the ability to upload a video of a sales call and have AI analyze it and come back to you with a personalized report. So to get started, since we have brand new projects, I created a brand new folder to house these projects. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started on Claude AI. So let's go back and let's go to Claude AI so I can show you exactly what I'm trying to emulate here. So if you go into your settings, and then you go into capabilities right here, and then click on this code execution and file creation. This will let you do things like create proper docx files, PowerPoint X files, Excel files. And one of the things that I love doing now is creating very cookie cutter PowerPoint templates on Claude AI using the front end tool. But because the front end is using a combination of code as well as bash, we can actually emulate all of this within Claude Code itself. It's helpful to not only build this on Claude AI, but have it give us the full blueprint that we can feed to Claude Code on how to replicate that exact same experience. So I'm going to send a basic request here. That should take 5 to 10 minutes. So can you create a slide deck walking me through how language models work and why prompt engineering matters? Can you make it around 10 different slides? And can you make the slides visually appealing, aesthetic, but still minimalistic? So when we send this over, I'm going to pick, just so for the purpose of speed, 4.5 Sonnet, and we'll send this over. This should start now going through all the steps we need to create the slides, create the content for the slides, and ultimately turn those slides into a PowerPoint X friendly file. So the first thing it does is it reads its own skill file that it has behind the scenes on how to create PowerPoint files. And then it should dive into the actual content creation. And now you can see it's created a plan as a markdown file for what the presentation should look like, the look and feel, the slide content, and the outline. And then from there, at the very end, we'll skip to the part where we actually have the physical PowerPoint. Now this finally ended up working, but let me tell you, this took 2 to 3 times of me running the exact same prompt because the context window would max out multiple times, which is one of the many reasons I came up with the idea to recreate this skill and this experience in Claude Code. Because if you max out your context window, like we've seen, you can clear it, you can start a new session, you can keep it going. But what will happen in Claude AI is it will not only time out, it will restart the session from scratch. So it's not like you can continue the work that it started. Eventually, like I said, after it failed multiple times, as you'll see right here, we ended up getting these files on the side. So this specific one was the language model prompt PowerPoint output. So if we click on this, you'll see it comes up with this design. It's minimalistic, it's not perfect, but it gives us a clear starting point. Now, the point of this is eventually I wanted to ask it, okay, now that you did this, and here's the exact prompt, I want you to be able to recreate this entire slide deck and use everything that you had to come up with for the file, because I'm trying to teach another AI agent basically how to recreate what you did. So learn from all of your mistakes, learn from all the bash commands you did to give me a perfect guide that I could just feed Claude Code to upskill itself on your skill set, so we can just port this over there. So it goes through and eventually creates a script, basically a Python script of exactly what it did. It walks through the presentation and an example of all the key lessons learned from its failures during the session. And then all I did was take all of these files and drag and drop them into our repo that we set up. And then I just used /initialize right here just to, again, upskill Claude Code on all of these files, because these files would contain the code, the mistakes they went through, and an example of the PowerPoint file. So my goal was to, as you'll see here, it creates a comprehensive Claude MD file, and then once it had an understanding of exactly what to do, I was able to one-shot it with a very succinct prompt that just said, create a PowerPoint file about tokens, basically how they work when it comes to LLMs, and create 10 slides that are black and white with a minimalistic theme. And then you'll see right here, with no additional back and forth, it ended up just putting it together. And then if I just show you right here, you'll see if I double click, it now created this PowerPoint file. Is it beautiful? No. Is it perfect? No. But if you get something to the point where it's perfect, now you have an entire command center that can crank out whatever you want. I just showed you PowerPoint files, but you can also create docx files, Excel files, all kinds of files. So if you upskill Claude Code on Claude AI's skill on the front end, you can make it a lot more scalable and, more importantly, a lot more efficient. So that's blueprint number 1 down. Let's move on to blueprint number 2. This is a very common thing that I like to do in Claude Code, which is when you get a brand new service coming out and there's API documentation, whether you're technical or non-technical, what I like to do is go to the documentation, copy paste it, put it into Markdown, feed it to Claude Code in a brand new virginized session, and again, do /initialize, get it to familiarize itself with that documentation so I can just use it to build something right away. So in this case, we are taking the documentation on basically how to enable uploading a video to Gemini's API, because Gemini is one of the only language models in the world as of this recording that can ingest video as input. So I'm going to show you not just one, but 2 cheat codes. The normal cheat code is going to Gemini, in this case, to video understanding, this specific API, and you'll notice right here we have this little drop down. This drop down allows you to open the page up as Markdown, and all I did was copy, paste it, go into our brand new session, and if I just unravel this, you'll see this video understanding. I just pasted this in a markdown file and I saved it. So that's all I did for step 1. But I like to be lazy if you haven't figured it out yet. So what I like to do is sometimes, if I know I want to be able to replicate a Gemini functionality, now that AI Studio has been leveled up, I'll actually go to AI Studio and create a version of the app, since a lot of the code is out of the box now. So if you go to AI Studio for the first time and you go to build right here, you'll see that you can supercharge your app with AI, and here are every single basically core API that you can use from Gemini. So all you have to do is click on one or click on multiple, and you'll see at the top it populates with all the documentation that it needs to recreate the app with Gemini's API documentation. So instead of me starting from completely zero, all I did was I removed these. Let's take this out, and we just went for this one, video understanding. I clicked on this, and then like you see here, my only prompt was make an interface where I can upload MP4 files. That's it. And then we were able to get this in one shot, and this works. So when you upload a file, you're able to get the summary of this file. All I did next, and this is the real cheat code, is you can just download all this as code. So this will download it as a zip. I took the zip, opened it up, and then I dragged and dropped the entire project here. And that is this section. You'll see right here, the Gemini Video Analyzer. That's the code for the app we quickly just one-shotted in the browser itself. And you can guess what comes next. Now that we have both of these assets, we do /init. It initializes, creates a Claude MD file with an understanding of this API, this app, and it now has a much clearer picture. And in the next chat, all I say is, using all your knowledge of the app sample I gave you, recreate a better version of this on localhost so we can spin it up. And again, localhost is just running it locally on your computer. So it goes through its to-do list right here. It goes back and forth. It just asks me for permission, obviously, to intervene on just validating things. And then it spins up localhost and asks me to enter my API key from Gemini API. And then once it tells me that the server is live, when we navigate over to my next screen, this is what it looks like. Is it beautiful? No, but I wasn't going for beautiful. I was going for functional. But now I can go drag and drop a video, and I'll show you how it works. So now I've uploaded a file called WhisperFlow Walkthrough. I'm just basically demoing the WhisperFlow tool that I use to dictate. And I can click on, let's say, Summarize, and then click on Analyze Video. And then this should be able to shoot this over to the API in one shot, come back with a summary. There you go. Here's the summary, walks through it. Now, could we make this better? Absolutely. But the goal was to one-shot this in a way where you don't have to go back and forth and fight with the AI and look for new documentation and have it go do deep research and go through all this process just to get to the same point after 1, 2, 3 chats and maybe hundreds of messages. So at all times, the goal is to go for the path of least resistance no matter what. Now for blueprint number 3, the goal is not to create a brand new code base, but how can we make the app that I just showed you a lot more geared to a different use case? So let's say we wanted to upload a sales call and then have Gemini analyze that sales call and give us a series of advice on how we could do this better. So what I'll do is we'll build on the app we already built in blueprint number 2 and just give it the instructions that it needs to be a lot more efficient at this specific use case. So I've opened a new session and we'll just send over a new instruction. Okay, so can we edit this app so that it's not only functional from just uploading any video, but let's gear it towards sales-based videos, so sales calls to be specific. So I want to be able to upload a sales call and then have it analyze exactly where these shortcomings were, where I could have been better, where I could have been more detailed in the back and forth, so I can basically dial in my sales skills. I'm a developer, so I'm not that great of a salesperson, so I want the analysis to be done at the level of a sales call. So even if we're shooting over some form of prompt behind the scenes, in addition to whatever we're sending when we say things like summarize, it should be summarizing or analyzing with respect to the fact that there's a lens of a sales call. So let's make this a lot more oriented to that, and also it's kind of ugly. So can we make it a little bit prettier? So I'll send this over and I won't go into plan mode. I'll just let it rip and see how far we go, but I would recommend that you go into plan mode. And after 15 minutes, we now have all the changes to make this platform a lot more sales focused if we go through all the output here. So if we go and test it out, I didn't want to use a real sales call, so I just generated one using Veo 3.1. So if we download this right here, and then we go and we just navigate to that specific sales call, we'll drag and drop this, and now we can click on Analyze Sales Call, and now behind the scenes it has some form of system prompt to give you more tailored advice on the sales call itself. It should come back very shortly because this is like a 10-second clip on what went well, what I could have done better, etc. And there you go. Here you have the overall impression, the opening, rapport building. It's giving me basically grades on every section, and you can make this whatever you want. But it's more so to show how we went from an idea, from a thought, to something tangible in a very short amount of time, just using these hacks that you can just keep up your sleeve. And now, onto the final act of the video. Act number 4 is the final and my favorite part of this entire video, because it's one thing to know all the tips, tricks, and hacks, and it's another thing to be able to vibe code your way to a solution or to some form of web application. But it's a completely different thing to work with actual colleagues that you might not be familiar with to bring an idea into existence just using Claude Code. So in addition to the course that I have in my community called Claude Creations, where you can find all kinds of additional modules on the application side of applying the skills that you've learned in this video, I also hosted a 2-week hackathon where everyone was paired up in teams with people that they didn't know, and we had all kinds of skill levels. We had non-technical and we had technical. And the goal was to build something valuable. You could have a blue sky in terms of what you would build, but ideally, because there was some community voting on the best projects, and you have to share your entire journey while you build the project, if you went for a problem that was actually pressing and useful and something that needed to be solved, that you could use something like Claude Code to help solve, this would increase your chances of winning. So with that, this was the winning submission from that hackathon.
Hi, I'm Tim Noble St. Albin. I have an older brother who has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. He likes to go and try to be as independent as he can.
I've lived on my own for so long, and I kind of coped with my disabilities.
Just hearing a situation that occurs, an accident, a fall.
You know, I can't stay awake 24 hours a day.
Just no amount of love is going to change the situation, and you need more than just love alone.
And I also recently assisted my mother in her passing. It really was hard for her to remember to do appointments and remember she wasn't taking medication properly. She had a lot of issues that I wish, and lived far away, and there was no way for me to tell what was going on.
Peace of mind looks like someone always taking care, like 24-hour care, whether it's virtual or in person. Just that ability to have that sort of monitoring.
Makes me happy. Just hearing somebody, on the other hand, that's family members.
If I can't be there, who will?
Research shows that over 90% of adults want to age in place, to stay in their own homes, surrounded by familiar spaces and routines. Yet loneliness among older adults has reached record highs. At the same time, caregivers balance work, family, and constant concern. Everyone wants connection, but time and proximity make that hard. That's why we built Para, a caregiving companion that listens. Para gives those aging in place a friendly way to talk about their day, and gives caregivers instant, respectful insights. Every competitor looked the same: sterile, blue, cold, and clinical. They make those living independently feel like patients rather than people. Not one integrated with WhatsApp, even though it's the most used application for those 65 plus, and a lifeline for families living across borders. We designed Para so anyone can use it. Large tap targets, clear typography, and accessible color contrast. Seniors deserve aesthetic apps with personality too. Caregivers see an at-a-glance dashboard. Green means stable, yellow prompts a gentle check-in, and red signals potential concern. Even in the middle of a busy day, a quick glance at the dashboard can offer peace of mind. They can tap to chat with Para and ask questions like, did John take his medication this week? Or how was his mood yesterday? And get an instant response. For a deeper look, caregivers can open a detailed summary with just one tap. Caregivers can also see a mood and a quick summary of the day. Caregivers can leave notes like doctor's appointment at 3 p.m. Para gently passes that reminder along to the independent. History lets users browse a detailed summary for the last 3 days. Aggregate data is available for the past 7, 14, and 30 days. All this data, the dashboard and history, is visible on both sides because transparency builds trust. The only difference is that the caregiver login opens to the dashboard while independents start in the chat. Beyond providing information, Para is a personal diary. Whether either side is experiencing burnout or loneliness, conversations are private and are never shared.
I want to let you know that I'm in real pain. Could you please help me?
I'm really sorry to hear you're in pain. It's important you tell your caregiver right away. Would you like me to help you contact them?
Yes.
Great. I'm sending a notification to your caregiver right now. They should be in touch with you shortly. You're doing the right thing by asking for help.
Our research shows that seniors already use WhatsApp, so we built an optional integration. That way you can chat with Para in an app that you already use. No extra downloads or learning.
I've created this simple WhatsApp integration via end-to-end. So I've used a open source platform called Evolution API by WhatsApp. So I say hi to Para here. As you can see, you say hi and then it's running the execution. So Para basically reply almost instantaneously.
Almost every member of our group had healthcare experience. That perspective shaped every decision, from language to layout to Para's personality.
A quick walkthrough of Para Persona. After 2 weeks, it will start picking up on their interests, celebrating wins, checking in on what they've got going on that day or which family members they've talked to. The ultimate goal, every conversation should leave them feeling more capable, more connected, and more valued.
Para also observes subtle behavioral changes over time, such as speech patterns, tones, and frequency of interactions, to proactively detect if something is wrong. One of the biggest challenges we had to solve was falls, the leading cause of injury for older adults. We needed a way to detect them quickly and reliably, without invading privacy. Cameras were out because they feel invasive, and wearables come with their own problems, like constantly having to be charged. So we took the route of radar sensing. It detects movements and stillness and even breathing, without recording any images or sound. This means a fall or other issue can be detected 24/7, even while sleeping or in the bathroom, without any privacy invasion. If anything seems off or a fall is detected, a notification is sent out to 3 redundant channels. So even if one network fails, the message always goes through. The whole sensing kit costs around $200, which is way less than most in-home care systems. Para works perfectly as software alone, but for families that want that added peace of mind, the optional radar provides awareness when it matters most.
We've added advanced fall detection. We are using an wave sensor. Some of the newer cars have them as child detection devices. Make sure you don't leave your kid in your car. That's actually one of the alerts. It sends out 3 alerts. This one is on WhatsApp. The second one is on Telegram. And the third one is on email.
Para isn't about replacing human care. It's about giving peace of mind to families and dignity to those living independently. It's awareness without surveillance and safety with autonomy. Thank you for following our journey. We hope Para becomes a trusted companion for families everywhere, helping them live independently together.
So while a polished final video is awesome, it's way more important to hear from the creators themselves as to all of the planning, the creation, the grind, the things that didn't work, because in reality, Claude Code is not a silver bullet. Using all the skills that I provided you in this video will give you all the golden BBs to help you get to the next level and get that much closer to whatever it is you're trying to build. So instead of me paraphrasing their entire experience, I want you to hear from them in this next segment, where I walk through why they came up with this idea, how they executed it, and what advice they might have for you, whether you're technical or non-technical, when it comes to bringing a thought to existence using something like Claude Code. All right, so I'm joined by my Community Genius Hacker Hackathon winners, and this was the group that won our very competitive hackathon, and you just saw the product they did. It's very impressive, and trust me, they're not all coders, they're not all experts, so instead of me yapping, I want them to introduce themselves before we get into how and why they did what they did. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jen, and I'm a marketing and generative AI manager day to day. I also do my own content creation. I do UGC for brands and businesses. And then I'm also owning my own business. It's called Gen AI, funny enough. And I do like AI education.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Matt?
All right, my name is Matt. I am a little bit more on the technical side. I am a data engineer during the day, and at night I pretend to be a hacker, coder, just about anything else I can do. I like to learn. I started up my own AI consulting agency, and I basically help companies solve problems, utilize different technologies and everything to, put forth best effort business-wise, just depending on the tech.
Awesome. Thank you. Louisa.
Hi, I'm Louisa. I consider myself a technical all-rounder. And myself and my business partner started Infinite Growth. And we work with businesses to implement solutions and empower their business. And when I'm not vibe coding, I'm in the ocean surfing.
I see the little surfboard in the back, so yeah, you're very telling. Thank you, Louisa. And Zach, go for it. Last but not least.
Yeah, my name is Zach. I'm a pharmacist by background, so not technical at all. One of my day-to-day job right now is helping patients getting started on the therapy. So I work for a big pharma company, which I won't name here. If I'm not working or vibe coding or try to break things, try to develop my own application, I'm enjoying time with my two little kids.
Amazing. It's like an intro to a game show. I appreciate it, man. So like, as you can see, as you guys are watching this, we don't have a bunch of technical folks on one project. We were kind of all over the place, different demographic, different diverse backgrounds. But that being said, the product that I demoed to the audience, can you walk me through what was the thought behind it, the why, and why you thought it needs to exist?
Yeah, sure. I can kick off with that, definitely. I think the idea really came about from having family and friends that need care, and having seen the other side of that, where people are at home for long stretches of time, and the loneliness angle might come in, and then the other side, the family, the caregiver, sort of there's concern or anxiety of how they are. So it's really about empowering the independent, and then just making an easier relationship, all around. And really the why is, when you brought this hackathon to us, there was a question, what would you build, like if you could build anything? And I thought, wow, if I had, a super team around me, how cool would that be to, use AI in this way? And as soon as I threw it out to the team, it like really resonated. So that just lit the match.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's not scripted, by the way. That was just raw, authentic. So when we dive into the product called Para, you guys definitely killed it. You pushed it out of the park in terms of like what you could do in a very condensed amount of time, around 2 weeks. What did you find to be the trickiest thing in coming to this? And especially as maybe non-technical folks, what did you find to be the part where you got the most stuck, and conversely, the aha moment?
Yeah, well, a lot of so we talk about not everybody being technical, and that was actually, I think, what kind of worked best about this. I mean, we, had Louisa come in with the idea and everything, and, we all got on board really quick. It was just something kind of close to us. I mean, at some point, we have family members, or we've all experienced or dealt with something in healthcare. My wife and daughter are both nurses and everything, so this was really kind of just a subject close to everybody. And so this idea comes in, we were already walking in with a couple of rock stars on the team, and we're like, this is great. We got together, we planned things out. We spent a couple of days looking and planning and everything. And well, to be honest, they let me loose with Claude Code after that. And it was fun, it was exciting, it was challenging. I would make stuff, I would break stuff. I would come back to the team and I would get feedback from Jen, I'd get feedback from Zach, I'd get feedback here and there. I'd work with Zach back and forth when it came to different integrations. I mean, it's hard to, narrow down, what did you do? Because there was so much just, integration, team working. We'd run ideas by Jen, we'd run ideas by me, we'd run ideas by Louisa, sorry. And it kind of worked out great because you don't have, a group of, what is the analogy? A group of chefs all working in the kitchen. Everybody had different roles, everybody had different experiences and different specialties. And, well, you can see it all came together quite well.
That was very comprehensive. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I was just going to add, when the idea came, I think everybody was on board because it was something that truly matters, right? And almost all of us, not either in healthcare or has someone, like Matt said, his wife and daughter are in healthcare. I'm in healthcare myself. And then Louisa, she's a caregiver. So we thought the idea was awesome. So there was no back and forth, no, we should do something else. It was just, how can we build that? And what we would need in terms of integration, in terms of hardware, what we would bring to the table. And, I think we came really quick, and with Jen's help, kind of like brainstorm how the app will look like. We have like a whiteboard moment using Canva, and Jen is a Canva wizard. Seeing her working on Canva, I was just blown away. We kind of like draw on a whiteboard how the app will look like, how the integration will happen, the way we want the user to feel. We didn't want to have a lot of wording. We wanted to be simple because other people will use it, right? And we thought about caregivers, busy people in the day-to-day. We wanted to be something super intuitive where you don't have to read a lot of things. When you're busy, you can just pick up your phone and just, say something super quick, right? And then we thought about integration. We thought about elderly people mostly use WhatsApp, so we don't want to give them something, right, where they have to download another application because it's not technical. We wanted to integrate something that people are already using, which is WhatsApp, right? And we thought about, okay, how would you do that? What's the simplest way to integrate WhatsApp to the application? So, and after that, it was just back and forth between Matt, Jen, and everybody in the team. How can we work best and ensure that the application, that's hackathon, so you don't have a lot of time. It's not like you have all the time of the year to build this thing. So you need to be super strategic and thoughtful on, how you partner and how you build this thing.
No, I love the add-on there.
So I think us having all different backgrounds was actually a really big strength because we had people come in from, a branding side and a strategy side and a building side and a testing side. And, we all have our own strengths. And I think we all brought exactly what we needed at the time. And there wasn't a lot of overlap. So having that diverse group of people working on something really helped us shine. We also did a lot of planning. I know that's like typically you want to iterate and move really, really quick. But because we sat down, we talked about, okay, what does this brand mean? What does it do? What should it look like? And when we figured all that out up front, then when we actually built the thing, it was a lot more grounded and it had, I guess, that feel that it's like, ready to go to market if we wanted it. Like we didn't want to build something that was, kind of half-baked. We wanted something right out of the oven that's like perfect and ready to go.
Amazing. So one thing that many people that will be watching this will have at the back of their minds that I'm always trying to beat out of the viewer is that even if you are starting at zero, Claude Code is not going to be easy. There are going to be many mistakes. There will be moments of rage. And I know Matt went through a few of those. But If you were speaking to someone watching this right now, would you say that most people have the ability to pick this tool up and go from maybe not A to Z really quickly? We go from A to C, then C to B, and C to G, etc., and go from there? Or do you think that there is a prerequisite to get started?
The best thing I can tell anybody if you're gonna, try and get into this is try and plan out what you're gonna do before you act. And I think that's what helped us a lot when it came to building Para, and a lot of what we've kind of learned in the community is you want to plan out what you're going to do. Sit down and kind of figure out your components, your back end. Some of these words may not make any sense, but you just want to know what different pieces you're going to use, where everything's going to kind of go, and just pay attention to what's going on. Don't let everything kind of scroll across the screen on you. You really want to just, have a level of awareness going into it, and you're going to iterate. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to have to start over. You're going to go through a whole range of emotions. I'm not going to lie, I did. And that was just basically every 30 minutes. But, it's an adventure. And I started out, I have a little bit of technical background, but it's kind of, pigeonholed into one specific area. So this is, a very broad spectrum for me to kind of step into and everything. And the tools, the patience, doing a little bit of research and everything really helped out. So I think anybody could, if I can do this, anybody can do it.
Very well put.
Yeah, I think in the age of AI, anyone can do anything. If you're ever lost or confused, you always have someone there to ask, and you learn by doing. So if you're just going to sit on the sidelines, you're never going to get anywhere. Just jumping in and going for it is how you learn.
Awesome. So if you're watching this, if you have FOMO to go and grab your monitor or your laptop to install Claude Code and actually go and build something with it, let that be your signal.
I would say if you can install Claude Code, that is the first step and you're already there. So fortuitously, my journey with Claude Code started with Mark's first video. And I did the 2-hour, followed along, and I'm using it every day since, and it enhances everything I do.
I didn't pay her to say that, by the way. That was just a happy accident.
Claude Code is not a magic wand, right? Things will break as you're building, right? So just be comfortable with that. And I think for me, not being technical at the beginning, that's something that used to frustrate me a lot. Because I thought, that's AI, everything will work perfectly, but things will break. So just give yourself a little bit of grace, a little bit of patience, and try to read your screen sometimes as you're building things, trying to understand what the AI is doing and what it's saying, right? Especially if it's not technical, because that will teach you one thing or two as you progress and building stuff.
Awesome. So thank you all for joining me here for a few minutes. I'm going to make all of your contact information available down in the description below so that everyone watching this can either speak to you, possibly hire you, now that you all have your veteran experience going through the roller coaster of using and building with Claude Code. So thank you all for joining me. So hopefully if you've been on the fence watching this video and you made it this far and you watched that segment, it should give you the confidence that you can build whatever you want. It won't be perfect. It won't be a straightforward journey. And obviously vibe coding and LLMs on their own have limitations. It's really hard to go from 80 to 100% versus 0 to 80%. But with enough iteration as well as upskilling on the way, you'll be able to build pretty much whatever it is you're looking for. And with that, this brings the 4-act Claude play to a close. And I really hope that you were able to upskill yourself throughout each one of these phases. And let me tell you, in terms of all of the resources that you saw in this video, from the apps I vibe coded, to the skills I referred to the hacks that I mentioned, I not only have a guide waiting for you, but every single repo that I basically built and vibe coded right in front of you, I'm making available in the second link in the description below. So if you're looking for an excuse to upskill yourself and really push yourself to the limit, let those resources help you go from 0 to 1. And if you like the way I teach and you want to go much deeper into Claude Code, that makes up a big portion of my community, Early AI Adopters, where myself and hundreds of other entrepreneurs and business owners work together to not only upskill in general in different domains of AI, whether it's Claude Code, voice agents, prompt engineering, RAG, or what have you, we really dial in on Claude Code because it's so potent. So if that interests you, check out the first link in the description below and join us in this ecosystem where you can take yourself to the next level. And last but not least, one big favor I would ask all of you, assuming this was a helpful video, is just to leave me a comment on the video because it'll be able to expand the reach, it'll really help the channel, and most important to me is it will provide hopefully free access to a lot of knowledge to get people off the fence and help them go from 0 to 1. I'll see you in the next one.